Hello and welcome back to today's video. Today we're going to be talking about the best three tier 10 medium tanks in World of Tanks. I'm going to break each tank down by their stats, their overall strengths and weaknesses, and then compare them to some similar tanks in the game. Hope you enjoy. Don't forget to sub, we're going for 500 by the end of the year. Let's get right into it. The first tank we're going to be talking about today is the CS63. This tank is truly a beast. Simple as it has a turbo mode, it allows it to go all the way up to 76 forwards and 22 in reverse. It just simply is unmatched. No other medium tank at tier 10 within the game can get this fast forward. Simple as. It allows you to be super aggressive, take that early game position to get that early game vision and that early game damage. Simple as, you will wreck if you choose this tank. Let's break down some of its statistics now. So, if you're running a setup of a hardening, a turbo, and a rammer, you can get your DPM up to 3.5k. That's very impressive. You're pushing up towards the top end of some tier 10 medium tanks with that kind of DPM. It truly is impressive. 390 Alpha, it's comfy. It's not, you're pushing your 440s like some tanks like the 430U, but 390 is kind of a comfortable spot to be in. You get your reload down to 6.54 seconds, so you truly can double track your opponents, which does allow you to pick up that extra damage as they peek around the corner with exposing their tracks. Put a shot into their tracks. You can double track them, farm them up. You're pushing. The only issue with this tank is its gun handling. It truly is the limitation of this tank. It forces you, instead of playing at long range, to play at mid to short range, which is where you kind of begin to struggle with this tank if you're not able to perceive what situation is the best to be in and what situation you need to run away from, which you can do with this tank because of its turbo mode. So this tank does have a very high skill level because you have to be able to read the game and read the situation you're going to be into or going into to know whether it's worth it, whether you can trade positive or trade negative. So you've got 8 degrees of gun depression, so you can work a ridge line, but not as well as some other tanks we're going to talk about in this list. It's okay, but don't rely on its turret armor. It will bounce some very troll APCR shots, but don't rely on it bouncing heat regularly just because of the shape of it. They will panic relatively easily with heat. So in a brawling situation, you can rely on it to maybe bounce one shot, but don't rely on it to bounce every shot. Simple as. Its upper hull is very trolly. It's very well angled. If you look at any images of this tank, it is very, very troll. Don't shoot it with APCR. You will bounce. Fire heat at it. So if you're playing it and you know you're playing against a tank that is shooting APCR, in a brawl situation, try and angle your armor just last minute and they will bounce a few shots. Penetration of this gun, it's okay, it's not impressive, but it's passable for a tier 10 medium tank. With standards, you've got 258, very similar to some tier 10 heavy tanks like the Super Conqueror, for example. And your gold pen, 315. It's okay, but you are going to be struggling to penetrate some flat armor of tier 10 heavies, for example, the Type 5 Heavy and E100 turrets. You will struggle to penetrate those. So do bear that in mind when you're going into a situation. But I do recommend this tank if you are good at the game, you feel like you've got a good read of what situations are best to go into to make a positive trade or a negative trade. Pick it if you're a good player, and you'll do very well. The second tank we're going to be talking about is the 121B. This tank is simply the best in certain situations, and I'm going to break that down for you right now. So, this tank is a bit of an enigma with its heat pen. It truly is something special. With its heat, you're pushing 350 millimeters of penetration. This is just such a comfy number. You can pen almost any tier 10 heavy's flat armor with ease with this amount of pen. You really do not even have to aim for the low down on the E100's turret. You can just pen it simply anywhere with 350 heat, which is what makes this tank so comfy. And I recommend this tank to anyone who's learning the game and the mechanics, just because it is forgiving, and that is what makes this tank so good. An excellent player can make excellent plays in this tank, but a not so good player can still make really good plays in this tank. So that's why I recommend it. And that's why it's at number 2 on this list. So let's break down some of its statistics now for you. Its DPM, 3.6k, better than the CS. Not as good as the next tank we're going to talk about on this list, but it is still very comfy. That kind of DPM does allow you, with that heat, just to farm up super huge amounts of damage in such a short amount of time. If you go onto what replays, for example, and look for 1-to-1B replays, you're going to see 8K, 9K, 10K games in 6, 7, 8 minutes, just because of that DPM combined with that heat pen. Just makes that shot to damage ratio much higher than other tanks with lower penetration and lower DPM. 390 alpha once again. Same as the CS, it's just a comfortable amount of alpha for tier 10 medium tanks. It is just nice. This tank's a bit more of a sniper than the CS63. You've got 2.02 seconds aim time and 0.30 dispersion. Better than the CS. It's not an incredible sniper, but from mid to long range, so not super long range, but mid to long range, it's relatively reliable. And obviously with that heat pen, you're going to be finding yourself being able to pen stuff from long range, providing you can hit the flat surfaces. It's good. Make it work, and you will be able to farm a lot of damage in it. Gun depression. This is one of this tank's significant weaknesses. You cannot work even the smallest rebel powers with 5 degrees of gun depression. You will struggle to play any undulation in the ground with 5 degrees of gun depression, especially as this tank is quite low profile. So, to make this tank work, you have to be almost like a hunter. You kind of you put the opponents on the back foot, and then you push. Because you do have turret armor. It's not completely reliable, and if you're facing tier 10 heavies firing relatively high penetration heat, they will be able to pen it. And you do have cupolas, which once again, if they can hit your cupolas, they are going to damage you. But it can side scrape. If you can get it into a situation where you can brawl with tier 10 heavies, you've got better DPM than quite a few of them, and the heat pen to be able to pen them, you will find yourselves being able to shred them and have a real impact on your team's ability to win a flank. I recommend running on this tank hardening rammer and V-stabs, or a turbo rammer and a V-stabs for those maps like mines, other maps where you want to take a position super early to be able to put out that early game damage and then be able to rotate to a different flank. Pick a turbo for those situations. With the turbo, you can get it up to 61 forward and 29 in reverse. That reverse speed is something special. You're reversing just as fast as some tier 10 tank destroyers. It's very good for being, once again, in that brawling situation to be able to circle strafe your opponents, just to simply outmaneuver them. It is just a great amount of reverse speed. I believe it's the highest reverse speed of any tier 10 medium tank. So, bear that in mind. Make use of it. Even without a turbo, this tank's forward speed is not bad at 55. It's towards the lower end of some of the medium tanks at tier 10, but it's still impressive, and you can still take positions early on, especially if you're running that hardening rammer V-stab setup. So as I said, strengths of this tank: long range, mid to long range, being able to use its heat pen, relatively accurate gun, and just being able to brawl if needed in a situation on a city map. But weaknesses: lack of gun depression, does have relatively weak polars, and people know what this tank's about nowadays. E100s are not going to willingly push a 1-2-1B. Whereas a couple of months ago, a year ago, they would have just gone, oh, it's just another tier 10 medium and just push. But a lot of them have learned that 350 heat does not do any good things to their turrets. So that's why this tank's at number 2 on this list. It's not perfect, but it's still very, very strong. Let's get right into the next tank. The final tank we're going to talk about on this list is the Centurion Action X. This tank is truly incredible. It is what I like to call the complete package. The previous tanks we've talked about on this list, the CS63 and the 1-2-1B, are great in their own rights. The CS63 with its speed, turbo mode, allowing you to take that early game position and get that early game damage. The 1-2-1B's heat pen and brawling capabilities. But the Centurion Action X is just the complete package. You can play this tank almost anywhere and get a result. Let's break down the statistics. You're pushing 3.6k DPM. It's just next level. You really are able just to farm your opponents down. If you combine that with its 390 alpha and 10 degrees of gun depression, you truly can just sit on a ridge and work that DPM. Don't rely on its turret armor working every time, but you can rely on it bouncing some poorly aimed shots, some standard rounds from tier 10 heavies, but don't expect it to bounce, tier 10 TD standard and gold rounds. It is relatively flat, and if they aim for the cheeks, they will pen it every single time. But If you're able to get a ridgeline, work this tank's DPM, gun depression, and alpha, you will farm. Combine this with this tank's 1.93 seconds aim time and 0.29 dispersion, you are literally able to sit on a ridgeline at medium to long range and click. And you will pen most times, especially if you're firing gold, because this tank has 330 millimeters of heat pen, catching the sides of pretty much anything, you're penning. The flat armor of some tier 10 heavies from range, you're penning. It truly is just a comfortable amount of penetration, and it works especially at that mid to long range. However, this tank is a little bit limited in its standard forward speed at 55 forwards and 20 in reverse. It's not impressive, so it does hold it back. So I recommend taking a turbo on certain maps, for example on mines, where you might want to get into position and punish the cross up to the hill, which has a little trick up its sleeve to be able to do that, and I'll break that down for you in a second. But with a turbo, you can get it to 61 forwards and 24 in reverse, which is just a little bit more comfortable. You can just get into that position, farm that damage, and then also be able to run away. So it's a little bit more suitable for smaller maps. But here is its little trick. It's called Hesh. It's basically the British tanks version of HE, and it has higher penetration and higher alpha. It simply is a beast. You're penning the sides, the rears of pretty much anything you shoot at, especially medium tanks, with 105 millimeters of Hesh pen, which this tank has. It is so satisfying just to pen anything with this tank's Hesh. For example, the tier 9 version of this tank, the Centurion 7-1, I free marked that tank running only Hesh. I think that tells you the strength of this round. It truly is so satisfying just to fire and farm. You're pushing 500 alpha, which is just insane with this tank's DPM. You're pushing this tank's DPM almost to 4.5k if you're using that Hesh. It simply is just so satisfying. And this tank has the accuracy to be able to fire that Hesh from long range at tank destroyers, at light tanks. You really can begin to farm. So, to conclude, the reason why this tank is top of the list, and some people might go, oh no, the CS is better. It's because it is the full package. It does everything that the CS and the 121B can do, but better. And it combines the aspects of some other very, very good tier 10 medium tanks, bringing it in to create the overall tier 10 medium tank package that I believe, after its buffs, it makes it the best tier 10 medium tank in the game. Let's go on to the conclusion. Well, that's it for today, guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you liked. I hope you got something from this video. If you did, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. We're going for 500 subscribers by the end of the year, so become a part of that. This tank series is a part of an overall series where I'm going to be breaking down each class within the game and discussing what I believe are the 3 best tanks from that class. Keep your eyes out for that, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers, guys. Bye.